The Way You Live, Saturday, January 4, 2014, 7:50 a.m. Frank is grinning at me. He waves and makes his way over, carefully avoiding the microphone stands and stepping over the cables. As he opens the door from the recording room, he says, "What's wrong, nephew? You look like you've seen a ghost." I stare at Frank, unable to say anything. He seems unconcerned and heads straight to the computer, where he starts typing something on the keyboard. "What date is it, Dan? Oh, there we are. January 4, 2014. Interesting." He turns to me, his brow furrowed. "Say, how did I die?" I notice he's wearing his favorite elbow-patched blue cardigan, the same one I just saw hanging in the cupboard. Even the moth holes are exactly the same. "Who are you?" is all I can manage, stepping backwards towards the stairs. Frank looks at the computer again. "Ah, good. I see you managed to execute the latest profile. I hate to lose more time than I needed to. So, out with it then. How did I die? I am dead, am I not?" His grey eyes stare out from behind his square-framed glasses. I notice his thinning hair is slightly unruly. It had been neatly trimmed when I last saw my uncle. "You choked on some turkey at the Christmas barbecue," I say. My voice is barely audible. Frank shakes his head. "What's the matter with you, boy? Didn't they teach you CPR?" "You had a heart attack as well. The ambulance men said there was nothing we could have done." "Oh, I suppose you're forgiven then. I'll just make a mental note to get a checkup ASAP. Curiously, he taps his right breast. "Things can't be good with the old ticker." "You're dead." "Yes and no. Oh, stop looking at me like that. You're starting to piss me off." "But you can't be." "Yes, I can, and I am. I saw him, buried. My uncle is 6 feet under the ground at Karrakatta Cemetery. Who the hell are you?" Frank sighs and continues two-finger typing with frenetic pecking strokes. "Yes, I am at Karrakatta. I'm also here. That was then. This is now. Get it?" He turns to me, plastering some wild strands of hair down onto his pate. I notice the familiar purple scar on the back of Frank's right hand. "No, I see you don't," he resumes typing. "Anyway," he mutters, "I'm glad Plan B worked. Now I get to see how the next chapter of my life plays out." "What's Plan B? What's going on here?" "Stop yelling, you idiot. Not at me anyway. Try yelling at that pathetic excuse for a human being you call your wife." "How dare you?" "Or that half-wit Brad. Yell at yourself for all I care. Just wait until I'm gone." Frank types a final line on the keyboard, presses enter with an elaborate flourish, and elbows past me into the recording room. I follow him. "I said, how dare you?" "I told you to stop yelling, didn't I? You're giving me a headache." He pauses at the door of the recording booth. "Listen, and listen well, Dan." He adjusts his Rolex GMT Master 2, a wristwatch he has worn for as long as I can remember, but which looks a little odd for reasons I can't quite fathom because I don't get a close enough look at it. "While I was, alive, I had to mind my P's and Q's." He looks up, his eyes like headlights on high beam. "Now I don't give a shit. I can say whatever I like. But I'm going to do you a favor, one which you really don't deserve." He waves his hands, gesturing at the room. "All this is at your disposal. If you use it wisely. If you don't, just lock it up and leave it for Picklejig. For God's sake, don't tell anyone else about it. I think I can trust you, lawyer-client privilege and all that crap. Remember, Dan," he takes a breath, "only you can change the way you live." "What the hell does that mean?" "You should know." Frank grins, a flash of white teeth. I notice the same perpetually sunburned nose. "It's from our favorite band, the Hunters and Collectors, one of the few 80s bands that didn't sound like absolute horse shit." "My God, it is him." "Look at yourself, Dan. You're a caricature. You turn a blind eye to everything that is wrong in your life, just like Jack. I thought you took after me." Checks his watch again. "Dan, you have a chance to break the status quo. My advice, take it. Either way, it's adios from me." He turns to the booth and opens the door. "Frank, stop! What's happening? What's in there?" "It's all on the computer. You're smart. You'll work it out." Frank winks as he steps in and allows the door to close behind him. I can see him through the window, standing in the middle of the booth, his back against the corrugated foam. "Frank!" Then, without warning, he is gone. 5:02 p.m. Every time I close my eyes, I see an afterglow of weeds, broad-leafed, furry-stemmed and tall, as fully grown as a man. I've spent the last 2 hours pulling at them frantically. Despite the mountain of foliage I've piled at one end of the lawn, a quick survey reveals there is little difference in the overall ambiance of my garden. I'm working frantically because I spent most of the day at Uncle Frank's looking for answers, clues, anything to help me understand what happened. This has left very little time for the gardening I promised to do. Thankfully, Kylie goes to a tennis club every Saturday afternoon where she plays a few games and then has drinks with her friends at the club bar. This has bought me some time, but I fear it will not be enough. I renew my assault on the stand of weeds, determined to break a path through to the unclad mission-brown bricks that comprise the walls of my house. This will give me some satisfaction. However, the weeds stubbornly resist my efforts, breaking just above the ground, their roots clinging desperately to the soil, the needle-like hairs on the stems stinging my palms and sticking to them like a fine layer of fur. As I work, I keep going over the events of the day, trying to make sense of what just happened. For some time after Frank disappeared, I remained transfixed, staring into the empty recording booth through the porthole window. Eventually, I mustered the courage to open the door. I threw one of the microphone cables into the room, half expecting it to vanish, and when it didn't, I spent the next 10 minutes inching my way into the booth. I could see there was no trapdoor or other means of exit. And after 15 minutes inside, it was clear that I wasn't going to disappear like my uncle, nor was Frank coming back. I returned to the computer and searched every folder and every file. Aside from the hundreds, if not thousands, of profiles, similar to the one on which I had clicked, there was little else. There were the usual operating system files I don't understand, a few music files, Frank's favorites, naturally, some pictures of people I didn't know, one of me scanned from a grainy Polaroid showing a gangly teenager holding Frank's prized electric guitar, an ivory 57 Fender Telecaster. As near as I could make out, Frank's last action on the computer had been to create a new profile. There was one there dated the precise moment of his disappearance, 4th of the 1st, 14/755. I was about to click on it when I noticed a README file created at about the same time. It read simply, "Do not click on any more of my profiles. Leave them alone from now on. Comprende? Try making your own." What was a profile anyway? On the desktop, I found a shortcut to a program called Profile Generator 3.2. Clicking on it opened what looked like sound recording or editing software. None of it made any sense. My last and biggest discovery was that Frank's computer was connected to an online network of a dozen or so other computers, each apparently in a different city. Sydney E, Melbourne F, Toronto G, New York H, Suva I, Rio J, and so on. Each of the other computers also contained profiles, some many, some only a few. All of the profiles were weeks, months, or even years old, except in Rio, where I found one that matched the exact moment of Frank's disappearance from the recording booth. 4th of the 1st, 14/755 a.m. "How's things?" I straighten up my stiffened back and squint into the afternoon sunlight to see Jim's silhouette. Just doing some gardening, Jim. My neighbour nods sympathetically. He has a frown on his face. "You know, that's not a good way of doing it." "Oh? Yes, I never pull weeds. I just spray them with this very toxic chemical." Jim produces a pump spray, the kind you can strap to your back. "Thought you might like to use some for your garden." "Isn't it dangerous for the environment, Jim chuckles. "Oh, I don't worry about that. Besides, your garden," he enunciates each of his words carefully, "calls for drastic measures." I think for a minute. Abruptly I say, "Okay, you've convinced me. Hand it over." I grab the bottle and fall forwards, not anticipating its weight. When I have recovered my balance, I ask, "How long will it take to work?" "Spray it tonight, and I reckon you'll see results in about 6 to 7 days, maybe a bit longer." "Oh." "You get a start on it, and I'll go mix up some more for the Bic. Kill everything, eh? Then we replant the whole garden, put in a reticulation system. Got some great ideas. You might want to raise the lawn by 20 centimetres. Yes, thanks, Jim. One thing at a time, eh? Yes, of course. Jim seems a little hurt. As he walks away, I add, by the way, I really appreciate it. Don't mention it. Jim waves his hand without looking back. Not long afterwards, Kylie's BMW pulls into the driveway, its top down. Brad is with her in the passenger seat. They're dressed in matching white tennis outfits. Kylie looks at the garden, then at me, with one of her Kylie stares, lips pursed, eyes narrowed, brow furrowed. The car doors slam and she makes a beeline for me, with her fast, short-stepped walk. She plays tennis, eats, has sex, all in the same way, stunted staccato movements, filled with venom. As she approaches, I reflect that without her habitual high heels, she really is quite short, like a stout piece of dynamite hopping towards me, the fuse burning ever closer to the nib. Brad is talking nervously, his voice seemingly muted by her advancing fury. Oh boy, someone's in trouble. Hey there, Dan. Dan Djurdjevic, you've obviously done nothing all day. I'm sick to death of your excuses. Dan, do you hear me? Do you hear me, I said. Look, Pumpkin, it's not a quick job. Yes, it'll take a bit of time. In a couple of weeks it'll be choice. Flash as a rat with a gold tooth. Jim has materialised with another bottle of the chemical. Dan and I've been working on it since this morning. Just got a little bit more spraying to do. You can't see it, but most of the job's done. In a little while all of this, he gestures at the weeds and couch grass, will be gone. History. Well, Dan, let's get a move on, eh? I've got some more drilling to do. For a moment Kylie's lost for words. Oh, well, thank you, Jim. If it wasn't for you, I'm sure Dan would have achieved nothing today. You're such a gentleman, she says, giving Jim a Kylie smile where her lips crinkle up at the corners, but her eyes are deadpan. Come in, Brad. I'll give you a soft drink. She glares briefly at me, and Brad smiles weakly. Make that a beer. Sure could use one. That tennis really took it out of me today. See you inside, eh? Kylie and Brad step over the weed carcasses and into the front entrance. I watch them, peeling my sodden T-shirt away from under my arms. After I can no longer hear their footsteps in the corridor, I turn to Jim. Listen, thanks again, mate. I owe you one. Nah, think nothing of it. My missus is the same. Why do you reckon I'm always in the garden? Come on then, we'll be finished in a jiffy. He walks off whistling, and I aim my spray gun at the weeds. Your time has come, I think, and pull the trigger. Except I haven't pumped up the pressure, and all that comes out is a dribble.